This is the Slots and Sockets podcast, episode number 52. I am one of your unpacking hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime.
I'm fully unpacked. Turbo Penguin.
Well, we got some stuff to unpack for today, kind of staying on the theme. And stock has been a very interesting story with AMD and Nvidia lately.
I know. So, I'm lucky to have a Micro Center close by, and I have multiple people who are hoping to find cards. And it's really interesting because, well, we've seen a trickle of cards here and there on the AMD side online. We haven't seen anything in retail stores. Now, I don't know how and why that is. Distribution can be odd sometimes, but what we're seeing online, the vast majority of cards the wild vast majority of cards are being sold for above MSRP.
Mm-hmm.
So someone in the middle or somewhere along, someone's making some money. Then the other weird thing is that we've seen an uptick of 50 series drops. So while we hadn't seen almost any drops of 5080's and almost no supply of 70s and 70 Ti's, we were seeing some of those, and even 5090's. In fact, I have a sibling who is trying to get a 5090, and I've gone to Micro Center twice trying to get one because they had it in stock. And by the time I got there, they were both gone out. They were only 2 or 3 cards, so there really aren't that many cards on the 50 series. And even on the 80 series cards, my Micro Center at one point had 8. So if you really wanted one, that was the way to do it. But even then, the 5080 prices at the Micro Center were easily like $1,500. Now,
Yikes.
I don't think Micro Center was doing that. I fully expect that is just someone in the middle, distributors trying to make some serious money. And I also think this goes back to AIBs. We know AIBs are hurting. They're not making cards. The non-AMD AIBs are really hurting because they aren't getting stock. Like, we know MSI has made a point that they're not making AMD this time around, and it's like that actually really hurts them because they're going to be making a ton of money on those cards, or they're financially going to be struggling.
Yeah.
And it makes the question is like, are the AMD guys like, hey, we're finally super popular? Because in all honesty, the 7000 series, while it's sold, was not a sellout card. The 7000 series was just okay. So it's going to be a very interesting task to figure out, if you're looking for a card, what to do. It seems to me like stock is going to get better. I don't necessarily think stock is going to get better really like tomorrow or the next day.
Right.
But I think we're going to start seeing some trickling, and I think we'll probably see another dump either late March or early April from AMD. And I think that's really going to help.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is just kind of looking at it from an outsider's perspective. Because I'm not one of those people who is smart enough to move close to a Micro Center, though, in the future that may change. It sounds to me like AMD is shipping between 10 and 20 cards for every one that Nvidia ships.
Oh, I think it's probably more than that.
Really?
I think it's a lot more than that.
Wow.
Because, if you look at some of the, what people are saying from distributors, and if you look at photos from distributors,
yeah, true.
There's a stack of 50 to 75 9000 series for 2 or maybe even 1 50 series.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
now, and we
Especially in some
know
of the
the
European retailers.
well of the 5070, like 5070 stayed on the on the shelves. At least my micro center had 5070's. Um, they were there for multiple days.
Mhm.
Now that's because with the 9070 there, nobody was like sign me up
Who
for
wants
less
it?
RAM and more money.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
think that's really where the 5070 is just a bad card. Should have never been released. The 5070 Ti should have been just the 5070, and it would have been a much better. And it should have been at that price point. It would have played well, but that's not what they're doing. Um, I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of resupply of the 9000 series. It seems like we're starting to see some more of that. And the other thing is like if we go on to Amazon's webpage for a number of these,
Mhm.
they're pre-selling those, and it's also coming in larger batches to the point where like at the beginning of the show we had a couple of cards drop in on Amazon of the 9070, and
Mhm.
I'm just double checking again. I can still buy them.
Yep. One
Um,
I'm looking at, uh, the XFX Mercury right now, you can buy for $8.99. Now that's $50 above what the MSRP is for that card.
70.
Oh, right, 70 because it's 829. So,
Yeah. And
um,
on top of that, we got to keep in mind the XT base MSRP is
is
599,
549. No,
599 for the
599.
XT.
That's right. 549 is
So
the
that's
non-XT.
so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
card at 899 is 50% more expensive.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind.
And you actually got your hands on one, and you didn't have
Lackluster.
some very good things to say about it.
No, no. In fact, it's really interesting how, you've got the Silicon Lottery, so you don't know kind of what it is. But I got to play with a Power Color Red Devil, XFX Mercury OC, and a Gigabyte base 599 card. And the best of the three was the Gigabyte card, without a doubt. Like, and it wasn't really even close. Like, not only just to overclocking, but like base speeds. Gigabyte was better. Gigabyte was cooler.
Mhm.
Um, Gigabyte, I felt actually was the best cooler. The XFX cooler, I'll tell you, the back plate is plastic. It's very plasticky. The paint was like coming off when you peeled off. There were a couple of sections where the paint pulled off with the protective film.
That's weird.
I know. And for an $869 card, I think that's what he bought it for.
Oof.
It's hard not to be like, dude, this thing's not impressive.
Yeah.
Um, the power color was better from a cooler perspective.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, very interesting. The other thing that's really interesting, and that's because I'm coming from a 6000 series, um, is you really need to look at the size and design of the pass through on a lot of these cards. And I was playing with the pass through, and I actually flipped the cooling setup in my PC
Hmm.
because my air cooler was taking it from the front like a normal. You take it in front and exhaust out to the back.
Or the top,
And
yeah.
what I was realizing is that it was kicking up the temps because the pass through was bringing the air up. It was getting caught by the cooler for my CPU, pulling in the warm air
Mm.
and running my CPU because it was getting warm air because it was getting it was getting the fresh warm air from the GPU,
Mhm.
and so it was really heating up that heat sink. And what I did is I flipped it the other way. So now my exhaust fan is now an intake fan, and I flipped it so now the heat is coming out towards it, and then I have my exhaust at the top.
Hmm.
So you really need to look at where those are, especially some of those cards that have really good pass throughs. the power color pass through was mostly blocked. It was absolutely garbage. Um, I will say of the pass throughs, the XFX was by far the best, least blocked.
Mhm.
Um, but you got to just take a look at it, understand what that is, and just understand with the pass through because you're getting some really warm air coming out of that card. Depending on what you're doing from a cooling perspective, you may need to move that around.
Right.
But I will say, Gigabyte, I was properly impressed. Gigabyte was the heaviest, but I also realized that it's probably because it wasn't the vapor chamber cooler. But from a cooling perspective, I felt like it was in the middle of the three. Um, the power color had the best of the cooling. Um, and the other half is that the gigabytes RAM, the VRAM, was the
Mhm.
hottest of them all, without a doubt. But it was
Interesting.
like hottest, like it was like in really hard runs, it was like 83, 85C, where others were like mid 70s. Now
Hmm.
that could have just I didn't obviously take any of these cards apart. Um, but because they weren't mine, and that's kind of a more addicting to do someone else's card.
Right.
If it were mine, I would want to take a look to see if maybe some of those weren't. Plus, the other weird thing is on the XFX, the back was plastic. I felt like if I'm spending $300 more,
Mhm.
think you could give me a painted black
Or anodized, yeah. Black
something,
aluminum backplate or something,
something.
yeah. Especially considering these cards tend to push a bit of heat through the back of the cards of the board too, because that is some significant cooling area. But the interesting thing is when we look at Amazon, they're selling the XFX with approximate ship date toward the end of April. So you're practically pre-ordering a card at that point.
Yeah, I think so.
Which
Which makes
our rule
it
is don't pre-order. But, if you're desperate for a GPU, that kind of gives you
well,
hope that there's
okay.
going to be stock.
But let's be honest, okay? We're saying don't pre-order things when we don't know what the performance is.
True.
At this point, we know what the performance is, so I think this is different. I think pre-ordering when you don't know what it is versus pre-ordering so that you know you're going to get what you get.
Right.
This is a good pre-order if you're in the market for this and if you really like that card.
Yeah.
I still say that, from my opinion, I believe the 9000, especially the XT, if you can buy this in the below 600 and below, I think you're buying a good card at a good price. I really question at 899 if that's a really good price, because the honest truth is at 899, $100 more, and you're looking at 4080 super territory. And
Yep.
the 4080 super is, it makes you question, if you're spending that much for an AMD card, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
If
Now,
you could get the other half of it is if you could get the 5080 at MSRP, then you sit there and make the same argument of the 5080.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and that's all I'm saying is that 899. Like, now, granted, I know that if it's the ifs, the 5080, I don't know if it's ever sold at MSRP. Maybe at launch, and if you were one of the lucky few to wait in line for like
Yeah.
eons, maybe.
The 5 people that got
I know,
Founders
right?
Edition 5080s.
So
Yeah.
I so I get it. All I would say is that you got to understand the performance you're going to get, and I don't know if buying that card at 899 or 869 is a good value. If you can get
Yeah.
these cards at 699 and below, if you can get it at MSRP, it's a great buy.
Right.
But a lot of this, like, let's go to and change subjects here. you know, the honest truth of why we're at this situation is because there's obviously been a um a change in allocation of 50 series. It's got to be a couple of things. Either Nvidia is really struggling with yields and they're having a horrible time getting cards that qualify for anything,
Mm-hmm.
um, or all of the silicon is going to data center because you're getting so little stock in it. Now, I wouldn't put it
Yeah.
past Nvidia to be spending 80-90% of the silicon to data centers.
Right.
I wouldn't put it past them, but
I
I'm
mean, that's
surprised
where
that
their profit margins are, really. I mean,
I'm just surprised that we don't see even the resupplies that we have on 80s,
mhm.
5080s and 5070s and 5070 Ti's. They're not really good. I mean, Micro Center is a good indication because you can see, okay, I have 15 in stock, 8 in stock. When your resupply is H cards from MSI,
Mhm.
that's not a good sign.
No.
Um, and when your resupply from it will be I'm very interested to see because I do believe that Micro Center will probably be getting something in the next week or two. And my expectation is that if you're close to a Micro Center, you should be able to buy an XT for, I'm going to guess they have 25 plus easy. Um, and you might have a number of those at MSRP pricing, but like Gigabyte has raised the cost of their MSRP card by $200. Asus has done the same thing.
Yep.
Um, in all honesty, I don't know. I mean, my 2 cents is wait, legitimately wait. Um, if you can get an MSRP card, then I think you're in a really good spot. Um, I think there's a couple of cards, like there's one card specifically that I might be willing to spend the more money on, and that's a Sapphire.
Mm.
That's a good looking card.
It is a gorgeous design.
It's a good
I
looking
really
card.
like what they did. Um,
Although there's a lot of people who say that that metallic plate is not has some design flaws. So,
yeah.
anyways,
Watch the Gamers Nexus review on that card because it's a very interesting teardown that Steve does.
it's
Um,
better design on the 12-volt high power
yeah,
than anything in the 50 series for sure.
which is
Um,
funny because we could touch on that real quick. I watched a video from BuildZoid today that talked about the power layouts. Apparently, the way that Nvidia is doing it with their 12-volt 2+2 is per the spec set up by PCI SIG. So Asus, who has their per pin monitoring in place, is technically violating the spec set forth by PCI SIG. Why is that crap design set up that way? It
no
doesn't
idea.
make sense.
No idea. No. See, this is why I go back to say, wouldn't it be nice if we just had triple eight pins, or because triple eight pins would have more than enough to get 600, right?
150
I
per
think
pin, so that would
that would be
be
450. No, it wouldn't.
no, we'd need 4.
You need four.
Yep.
See, this is why I believe, in all honesty, the notion of what killed Blackwell from a performance perspective, um, is that this is something that should have been a 3 nanometer part, where it
Mhm.
would have used less power, would have been clocked faster, would have been more efficient. And when they pushed it to there, they had to, it forced them to go to a higher power usage,
Or
and that really
potentially
hurt them.
kept the same power but had way more performance for that power,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we
Yeah.
usually see generation to generation when they're able to use the process node they expect. So, yeah, I mean, I think it could potentially boil down to they had to do 4 nanometer instead of 3 nanometer, and they just apparently they're still struggling with the yields. At least that's what it sounds like. Or to your suspicions, it could also be that they're routing the majority of the golden samples out to their commercial cards. The was it the RTX 5000? I forgot the
6000
name.
Pro, the
Yeah,
new one,
6000 Pro.
the one they just dropped. Now, this is an interesting one, and I'll just briefly talk on this. And this is my 2 cents, because what the RTX 6000 Pro is a GB202 die
Mhm.
at like 99% of it.
Yep.
It's not 100%. Like, there are some sections they have it blocked off, and I think it's purely for yields, because otherwise it would have to be a perfect every time.
Yep.
But that is a very interesting card because it's now using 600 watts, and 296 gigabytes of VRAM. It's obviously going to be a very expensive card. Um, so, but by the way, Amazon just dropped a gigabytes 9070 XT for 729,
Ooh.
and you can check out.
Oh. Well, after the show, I might have to get my credit card out.
Oh no,
Yeah.
it's
No, it's
already
gone? Oh,
zero. It's
son
gone.
of a
See, so this is what we're saying. Like, it instantly draw. I see it there. I can click on it,
Oh, no.
and it's gone.
Yeah.
So all I can tell
It's
you
it's
is
just like
that,
that South Park meme,
yeah,
and it's gone.
it's gone. Exactly. Like, for gamers, it's gotta be like so frustrating,
It
because you sit there and
honestly, I don't
say,
know. I mean, it's making the buying experience a game. It's like,
"Oh
who can
no,
get to
no,
the checkout button first? Man, hit that buy it now, man.
I don't know." I just think
Oh,
you just
shoot.
got to be totally in it. Now, what's interesting is like, anyways, but the RTX 6000 Pro, um, I, look, I'm sure somebody is going to buy this and play games on this,
Mhm.
and they'll be their gaming machine. But it is absolutely overkill, and we don't have pricing. My only guess is it's 10,000, because 96 gigs of RAM is going to be a lot. And it really is designed purely for them. Um, it looks like PNY is the manufacturer for those cards, because they actually have a landing page for it. So it most likely is a PNY. So I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens stock wise. Um, the other thing is, since we last spoke, is 9950 X3D.
Mhm.
Did we talk about that last time?
That was our last show. Yeah, the whole thing.
So, okay. Yeah, that's out. It's a thing. It's fast. It's more expensive. And if you're just playing games, the 9800 X3D is still preferred. If
Yep.
you do both, then you probably want to if you do content creation, you're a streamer, or if you do heavy workloads on your CPU,
Lots of
then
virtual machines, things
the
like that. Yeah.
9950 X3D is the way to go. It is technically faster than the 9800 X3D. So you've got that going. But unless you have a super big use case scenario, the notion is, what a lot of people are saying is 9800 X3D is the way to go. So I don't see that really being a difference. Um,
Yeah. And
so
I think for my next build, I am gonna go with the 9950, because I do that kind of stuff. I don't just game with my system, so, I'd be able to take advantage of the best of both worlds. And the fact that, of course, it's not best practice, but the fact that the 9000 series CPUs now don't require a reinstall of Windows to get core parking to work properly just means I can take my Sabrent 2 terabyte
well,
out and plunk it in the new system and be ready to rock.
and let's be honest, with core parking, that is something of the 7900, the 9900, the 5900X, the 5800X parts and lower, the 800, I guess 800 series, maybe you call them, I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
they are, the 8 core and lower don't
Right.
need to do that. So if you're trying to core park on your 58 or 88 or 9800 X3D, you're doing it wrong.
True. True.
So
Yeah.
look, we apologize for the
The delay.
slowness of some of
Yeah.
ours. Moose is relocating, and
Yes.
but we will be back to schedule, I think, now moving forward. And I don't know, maybe we'll do something this weekend, because I feel like, maybe we have some more stungs of stock, but right now, I think everything that's out is sort of out. We're going to hopefully see maybe some slowdown in news.
Yeah, we're kind of hitting the slow time in the news cycle for hardware, because everybody's done their end of year releases, and it's basically kind of come down to rumors that are coming out, because we've got some interesting stuff coming up with uh AMD's next generation APUs and things like that, I'm still looking into. um
Uh,
and
Real
AMD
quick,
apparently has an ARM thing coming.
the one thing I will say, and this was, I saw this today,
Yeah.
and it wasn't, there's not a ton of information, but there is another like mini PC with AI 395 Strix Halo,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have pricing on this. I will tell you, I am very interested in these little tiny PCs,
Yeah.
because if I can get 128 gig of system memory and a 2 terabyte SSD on a small form factor, this is going to make land rigs amazingly easy to travel with.
Right, especially
And
if you have 5070 or 4070 level performance out of it,
uh, I
you
mean,
know?
this is like, and I'll tell you, like, this is going to, like, I would not be surprised to see a slew of these come in and be um, either Steam Machine compliant,
Mhm.
or I'm surprised we haven't heard or had grumblings of a Steam Machine, because this is a huge jump. And if you could get Steam to kind of optimize this, which we know that they're already optimized, because it's the same drivers. It's the 3.5, which is the Z1 Extreme,
Mhm.
same generation. These could be really cool little buggers to like hook up as a set top box and
Yep.
play Steam on. And
Or
I'm seriously looking at that as a realistic option,
yeah, or to replace mom's current system. Like, mom
because
has my old
ever, well,
2700X,
this is
and
a little overkill for mom. I mean, come
well,
on.
yeah, but overkill means it's just gonna last her longer.
Sure, sure.
So, I mean, is
And on that,
Windows in Windows is Windows really gonna eat that that kind of horsepower?
no,
Actually, it's Microsoft. Yeah, it could.
good.
They've done stuff. So, on that bombshell, I think we're going to call it the end of the show for this evening. Thank you all very much for watching. We appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time. And if you can, give us a like and subscribe and do all the algorithmic goodness down the doobly-doo with some comments and fun things and all that good stuff. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Take care, guys.
Good night, everybody.